Today we're delving into a real-life case that shook a community. The murderer Jalal who killed his family. It's a serious and heartbreaking story, one that we believe needs to be shared. A story of Jalal, the father who murdered 11 members. This incident took decades ago in 1999 in Saudi Arabia, in the city of Medina. There lived a family of 7 members, 3 girls, 2 boys, and a father and a mother. The father's name was Jalal. He was 47 years old. He was known as a troublemaker in his neighborhood, and no one would dare to mess with him or even come near him, including his family or relatives. They all would avoid him. He had a very bad temper, and he would always curse and only understood the language of violence. If there was any misconception between him and any person, he would physically abuse them. Basically, in his dictionary, there is no room for understanding. On top of that, he was a jobless man, and whenever he worked in a place or with anyone, the first day itself, he would be fired from that place. One of the person witnessed that Jalal was trying to look for a job like a normal person, not because he wanted to provide for his family, but to satisfy his own needs and buy whatever he wanted. Afaf, the wife of Jalal and the mother of his children, was opposite of Jalal. She was known for her patience and her good character. Afaf's parents have passed away when she was very young. She was raised by her older sister Fatima, who lives in Jeddah. She has another sister named Zainab, who lives in the same city as her in Medina. She had no one in this world except her 2 sisters. She was forced to cut ties with her sisters because of Jalal. Whenever he comes home from outside, the first thing he would ask, "What did you cook?" And if Afaf replied saying, "There's nothing in the fridge," he would start to beat her up. And when he's done abusing her, he would say, "Listen to me carefully. I don't want to hear the word nothing. Don't ever tell me there's nothing in the fridge or there is no food in home. That's not my job. That's your job to get." He would then tell her to go beg and get it from the people in the neighborhood, or to even dig it out from the ground if it needs to be. But most importantly, he wants the food to be ready in front of him no matter what. Since Afaf had no contact with her family, she had no one to complain about her situation. Every day before her husband comes home, she would go to the neighbors, knock on their doors, and ask each of them the ingredients she needs to cook. And knowing her situation, the neighbor would help her. Jalal has deprived his family from all kinds of happiness, including the 2 festivals of Muslims, which is Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. One Eid, as usual, Afaf went and knocked on the doors of her neighbors, but nobody was home, as it was the day of festival and everyone went to visit their family and relatives. So Afaf came home empty-handed. When Jalal came home and didn't see any food in front of him, he started hitting Afaf so badly, and when he was done hitting her, he Islamically divorced her, saying 3 times, "I divorce you." And right after he said that, Afaf became unconscious, and Jalal left her laid on the ground there. All while this was happening, the kids were all in their room, and when they heard Jalal left the house, they all came out and found their mom on the ground, and they knew exactly what they were dealing with. They tried to bring their mom back to consciousness by sprinkling water on her face. The moment she woke up, she decided it was enough, and since he already divorced her, she took her children and left to go to her sister Zainab. She had no idea how to get there and was standing on the side of the road with her kids, waiting for someone to stop and help her. Luckily, a couple saw them, offered to help them, and dropped Afaf and her kids to her sister Zainab, who was residing in Medina. Afaf knocked on the door of her sister's flat. When Zainab opened the door, she didn't recognize the woman standing in front of her along with her kids. Afaf took off her veil and embraced Zainab with all the strength she had and mentally broke down. She explained everything that she went through to her sister, begging her sister to save her and her children from Jalal. Zainab advised Afaf to travel to Jeddah and stay with her older sister Fatma because it seemed more safer there and Jalal can't harm them. Meanwhile, Jalal on the other hand returned home, called out to Afaf, and when nobody answered, he looked around the house and found it empty. He started cursing Afaf and acted like he didn't care. 1 month passed. He didn't ask for them or looked for them. He was enjoying his life with his bad companions and eating his meal at their place until he felt unwelcomed by his friends. He started missing Afaf's presence, but he doesn't know where she is. There was only one solution to confirm where Afaf was, and that was to stalk Zainab and her family. And when he saw no sign of Afaf and his kids, he was sure they weren't with Zainab. And to confirm further, he called Fatma, the older sister. When Fatma picked up, he was being super nice, asking, "Oh dear sister, how are you? And how's everything with you?" To that, Fatma responded, "May God's curse be on you." Jalal angrily shouted on the other side, asking, "Where is Afaf? I want my wife back." Fatma responded, "Yeah, don't you remember you divorced her? There's no wife of yours here." Jalal recalled the moment where he divorced Afaf, and he also confirmed that her and his children are living with Fatma in Jeddah. The next day, Jalal left Medina and traveled all the way to Jeddah with his car. He knocked on the door of Fatma's house and her husband Adil answered the door. And of course, Adil knew everything that was going on with Afaf and Jalal. He let him in. Jalal was sitting there acting all weak, admitted his mistake, and promised he would be a better man and a father, begging Afaf and his children to forgive him and return to Medina with him. Afaf refused to return with him and asked for an official divorce in court and asked Jalal to leave her alone and her kids. After some time, Fatma advised Afaf to reconsider her decision and to give Jalal a second chance, as he seemed genuine with his words. Afaf thought for a while. Looking at the condition her sister Fatma, she did not want her and her children to be a burden on them. So she calls Jalal and returns back to Medina with him. The first few weeks everything went well. He spent more time with his children and stayed out of trouble. But again, it only lasted for a short period of time. One morning, Jalal returned home from outside and asked, "Where's food?" To which Afaf responded, If only you provide, I could make a meal for you. Jalal replied angrily, How dare you talk back to me? And he abused her physically, left with her all hopes broken. Afaf decided she will not stay even for a minute. She packs up and leaves. She goes back to her sister Fatma and lets her know she no longer wants to continue her life with him and ask for an official divorce. Fatma and her husband Adil supported her and they went to the court to file a divorce for Afaf. The court calls Afaf and Jalal for a hearing. The judge asks Afaf the reason to why she wants a divorce. Afaf tells the court everything that has happened to her to further prove her story. Her first daughter becomes the witness to her tragic events. To finalize their divorce, the judge gives them a date and a day to come back. Jalal didn't want to divorce Afaf. He didn't like the idea of Afaf marrying someone else, living happily. Also the fact that Fatma and her husband Adil told him to get lost when he tried to create a scene outside the court, and when his very own child testified against him in the courtroom. He couldn't bear all these unfavorable moments, so he plotted a plan to teach everyone a lesson. With so much rage, he rushed to Fatma's house with a gun and few bullets in his pocket. Jalal's younger son, who is around 8 years old, opened the door. He was scared and froze until his dad asked him, "Where is your mom?" The boy replied, "Mom, Aunt Fatma, and Uncle Adil, and my sisters went out." He then asked, "Who is at home?" Before the boy could reply, Jalal enters the house and finds Fatma's children are playing with Jalal's older son in the living room. Fatma had 5 children. Jalal dragged each one of them and tied them up with a rope and taped their mouth so they can't scream. He then began to load his gun and aimed on the first victim and shot each one of them on the head with no remorse. Their bodies laid flat lifelessly in a pool of blood. His sons stood there scared for their life and witnessed all these horrifying scenes. They had a maid living with them. When she saw Jalal with a weapon, she locked herself in a room and didn't make her presence known. After committing a monstrous deed, Jalal was eagerly waiting for his next victim. Few hours later, Afaf, her daughters, her sister, and her brother-in-law arrived and rang the bell. Jalal opened the door. Who was waiting for them? When they entered, they saw the lifeless bodies of the children, all tied up on the floor. Fatma screams. Adil gets into a physical fight with Jalal. Jalal tackles him down and strangles him to death. Afaf tried to escape with her children, but Jalal gets in the way, stopping her from living. He then tells her the plan was actually to kill you first, but I want you to witness all these before I kill you. He then proceeds to shoot the daughters, her sister, and then her. He threatens his 2 sons, asking them if they want to join their mother or quietly follow him. The sons had no choice but to go with Jalal. He fled the scene and returned to Medina, to his mother's house. Jalal's mother was shocked to see her son's clothes stained with blood. She asked him, "Where is your wife and your daughters?" To which he replied, with no remorse, "I killed them." His mother couldn't believe him and asked him, "What happened? What did you do?" He shouts at her and tells her, "I'm telling you, I killed them. Don't bring this topic back again." The maid came out of her room and ran to the street, screaming for help. A group of people who walked by the area came to the scene to check whether the maid is telling the truth. They wasted no time and called the cops. When the cops arrived, they started questioning the maid and the neighbor. The maid gave them all the details, including what happened between Jalal and Afaf. The police alerted the stations in Jeddah and Medina. Jalal became the most wanted person on the list. The police of Medina knew where he was hiding and raided his mother's house. The police officer tells him to surrender himself. Jalal grabs his two sons and comes to the window and threatens the police if they get any closer, he will shoot the boys. The police warns him again, if he doesn't surrender himself, they will kill him. Jalal tries to negotiate with the police, asking them to give him 30 minutes just to go and kill Zainab, the sister of his wife. But the police warned him for the third time, "If you don't surrender, we will shoot you." Jalal wore his mother's abaya and escaped from the back door. The police ran after, telling him to stop. When Jalal realized he cannot escape, he pulled out the gun and shot himself.